Picture a space wolf left behind on a world teeming with orcs. His brothers long gone, his vox silent, his armor torn, his mind fraying. They say the wolf spirit came to guide him, but spirits are not meant to whisper promises of glory, and these ones demand blood. Welcome to the Model Method. My name is Tansy, and today we're going to be kitbashing a Chaos Wolf Lord. The foundation of this model is going to be the new Wolf Priest from the Space Wolves range refresh. I'm going to be building it up with some tack so I can get a sense of what the model is like. I know that there are some parts that I definitely want to keep from this current model, but there are some parts that I'm just going to get rid of completely, and other areas that I want to modify so that they fit the project better. So let's start going over the elements and the choices for this project. Now, immediately I went to my Age of Sigmar Chaos Chosen box to grab one of these runic hammers. But before making the decision on which hammer to use, I should probably figure out how he's going to be holding it, what pose he's going to have, and which arm I'm going to have to leave in place. Now, one of the major style decisions I'll have to make is whether I want to stick with these Wolf Priest leather gloves, or maybe use the plated armor pieces from the Chosen kit, or maybe just stick with something more traditional from the Chaos Space Marine range. Now, while I was looking at my Chosen sprues from the Age of Sigmar, I did notice these great leather boots which match really well with the Wolf Priest gloves. So it really helped push me in the direction to make that decision. So I'm gonna go with the leather gloves and the leather boots for this one. What's great about this too is the legs that I'm not using, the ones that come with the Wolf Priest. These have a great kind of chaplain aesthetic, and based on the last time I was building a chaplain a few months ago, I realized I'm actually lacking a lot of these. So having some of these in my bits box is going to be really helpful for future projects. Now, I am leaning towards the Chosen hammer over some other options like the Space Wolf mauls, which I have a couple options here for. And if I do want to use the current Wolf Priest arm with the glove and the Crozius handle, maybe replace it with a hammer head, I can probably find a little power box to put on there to make it look a little more sci-fi. The backpack that's included on the Wolf Priest is super boring. It's just the standard Primaris backpack, and they just put one of these little wolf things on top of it. Way too boring, doesn't fit my aesthetic, so I'm gonna be looking for some other options. There are these great wolf head options on the Wolfen backpacks from the Wolfen kit, so I definitely want to use some of those, but I think I'm gonna mix them together and modify a Chaos Space Marine backpack. The fur and the torso are definitely gonna be staying in. I think they look great. The shoulder pads will probably need a bit of an adjustment because they look like Space Marine shoulder pads right now. Along with that, on the torso, there's this kind of toothy necklace with a Space Wolf looking medallion on there. I'm gonna have to modify this. And then of course, the mask, the skull-headed like wolf mask, that's definitely staying there. To start assembling the model, I'm going to glue a couple of parts that I know can be already glued in place, like the torso and the cloak bits, but we're not gonna put the fur shoulder pads on yet or any of the other parts yet. So let's move on to the arms and weapons. I've decided to replace the head of the current Crozius being held by the Wolf Priest arm. I'm going to do my best to carefully cut this off with my knife so that I can use it in a future project. And then I'm just going to clean the top of the handle so that I can try to fit some other stuff on top of there. I have this leftover weapon part from one of my previous videos, and it's got this great power box on there. So I'm gonna cut away the top of this mace head so that I can use this for the hammer that I'm building here. And then I can move on to the hammer head, which I can also cut off carefully, clean up, and then tack it on. What's great is that I noticed the proportions seem a little bit off. It's a little too long, so I can now trim the hammer head down just a little more and make sure that it fits on there and it looks good. From there, I can glue each of the parts of the hammer together and see what they look like, and then make sure they're nice and aligned, and glue the whole arm onto the model. For the other arm, I am just gonna keep this dagger arm. I really like the way this dagger looks. The way I wanna do this lore-wise is, this is kind of like his plasma pistol, but it's a dagger that he throws, and it can be like infused with plasma energy. And he goes and he either picks it up after he throws it, or through some sort of warp magic, it just kind of appears back in his hand, ready to be thrown again. I think the painting is gonna really help sell this effect more so than any sort of kitbashing will. Cool, so now let's move on to the legs. I really lucked out here. The legs that I picked with the boots, they surprisingly just kind of slot right in to the spaces where the legs would go on the Wolf Priest model. There's just some edges, some creases that fit in really nicely. For one of the legs, there is a bit of a nub that I'll have to shave down a bit, but it's a pretty minor cut to get everything in place. So I'm gonna use some plastic glue, just cover the whole area in there and fit both legs in and wait for those to set and dry. Now the shoulder pads were a little bit tougher here. I really don't like the way that they currently look. The lip on there is just way too Loyalist Space Marine looking. It really pulls away from the Chaos aesthetic, so I definitely want to switch those out. I did consider cutting the entire shoulder pad out and then cutting another shoulder pad to fit in there, and I just did this for another project that I'll be sharing in the future, and I really didn't enjoy the process, so I'm going to avoid doing that here. The uneven edge of where the fur is would make it even harder than if I were just doing it with like a curve from a cloak. So I'm going to avoid doing that. What I've opted to do instead here is to use my knife. First off, I'm going to trim that lip down so it looks more just like a plain flat shoulder pad, and then I'm going to apply a whole bunch of chipping and battle damage with my knife. Really make it look like it's been eaten away over time. There's maybe a bit of corruption there, but give it more of that, you know, chaotic look over something that looks too plain or too clean. With those done, I can glue them in place and I can move on to the backpack. Now, I mentioned before how I'm going to be doing this. I'll carefully cut away the wolf heads from this wolfen backpack. I'm going to keep this wolfen backpack. It's not really a traditional looking Space Marine design, so I can probably fit this into a future project. Then I'm going to jump over to my Chaos Space Marine backpack. I've got this one. I think it's from the old Possessed kit, and I like the way that the side parts fan out really wide. I think that's a very, you know, traditional looking Chaos design. And on top of that, this spine that's running down the back, I think that's really going to go well with some of the bone themed accents on the models. I'm going to cut the little circular vents off of the sides here so that I can replace them with the wolf heads. So I can give it all a little bit of a cleaning with my knife, and then I can do a quick tack test before gluing these parts onto the backpack. In order to get this onto the model, there's a little bit of a nub on the back of his torso, so I can cut that down with my knife carefully and then plastic glue the backpack on there. Now, there are a couple of little details I need to add to this model. First off, we're going to work on that toothy, fangy necklace that he's got going on. I found another medallion with an 8-pointed Chaos Star that's almost the exact same size. So this is perfect. However, replacing this, actually getting that piece on there, can be very difficult. So what I ended up doing is taking my knife and carefully cutting through the connecting point between some of the teeth and that medallion. What ended up happening was I bent the teeth, almost made them completely straight in the process of cutting. As I got to the top of the current medallion that's on there, I ended up breaking the entire necklace in half. Now this is okay. Once it's all glued on, it's still gonna work out. This was definitely something that was very challenging to cut. Once it was cut, I was able to glue the necklace pieces on, put my Chaos medallion on there, and then bend the fangs back into place. So it ended up working out just fine. You can't even tell that it was broken into two pieces. And to finish up, there is just a portion on the hip that's kind of looking bare right now. I'm just going to put a couple of pouches on there. I've got one with this interesting looking little bottle. I'm not going to cover too much of the painting here because a lot of these things, these techniques, I have covered in previous videos, but I'll tell you a little bit about some new stuff that I've tried to do. I ended up picking up a bottle of this Pro Acryl Payne's Gray. A lot of people were speaking highly of it online, and I wanted to give it a try for my shadows. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to base coat the entire model with it, and I'm going to let that dry so that I can start coming in with a few other colors. I've decided to use Red Oxide from Pro Acryl and Steel Legion Drab from Citadel, and I'm just basically painting over the cloak and the leather boots and the gloves, but I'm being a little bit messy and I'm trying to have some of that Payne's Gray showing from underneath. For areas like the mask, any bone areas or whatever, I'm going to use Pro Acryl Ivory or Dark Ivory like I normally do, and some Skeleton Horde to finish those off. For any of the armor plates that are going to be black, I'm really not going to cover that. My last video was literally how to paint black armor for Fallen, so if you're interested in that, feel free to check out that video. There are some metal accents that I wanted to get, almost like a rustic or worn tinge. So I ended up going for this scale 75 Necro gold, and I'm just gonna kind of dry brush this over top of some of those areas while leaving a bit of that Payne's gray showing from underneath. To tie all of these colors together, I will be taking more of that Payne's gray, diluting it down heavily until it's pretty much a glaze, like a tinted water, and I'm just gonna be working into the recesses of all of the areas where I want a bit of that Payne's gray to show, just to make some of these blends transition better. For the plasma dagger, I'm gonna be using jade green and bright yellow green from Pro Acryl, and I'm just gonna be coming in with a couple of different layers alternating to try to make it look like it's glowing bright green. Fortunately, I did remember to not glue the head down so that I'd have a much easier time painting the green eyes on this wolf head. I'm gonna be using the same jade green and bright yellow green and just making sure that those are really bright and clean and that they stand out. For the base, nothing too special here. I had this tactical rock from my Centaur Demon Prince of Corn conversion, so that came with the Centaur Marshal. Along with that, I'm just gonna toss some skulls on there. As I mentioned, this particular Chaos Lord was stranded on a planet full of orcs. Obviously, his chapter thought that he had died, but he ended up surviving with no way to make communication, and there was no one coming back for him. He ultimately spent all of this time just hunting and killing orcs. That's become his specialty. That's what the wolf spirits compel him to do. So I've left a couple of orc skulls on the base, and I'm just going to use a bit of Demon World texture paste. This is pretty much what I use on all of my core chaos bases. So with all of that, let's go ahead and take a look at the finished model. When this model was revealed, my chaos brain immediately started turning. I think I found a good balance of retaining some of the original design, but adding just the right amount of chaos corruption. There are so many new Space Marine characters coming out that are all ready to fall to the Chaos Gods, and I'm getting ready to do quite a few of them. So if you are interested in seeing me create more projects like this in the future, do consider subscribing to my channel. And if you liked this video, let me know with a thumbs up. Until the next one, take care. Bye.